Welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam Smith, and inside this GameFound preview series, I'm excited to show you guys Champions of Rokugan in action. This is coming from Monolith, and it's landing on GameFound in the very near future. If you want to find the exact date as well as a link to the campaign page, I've got it for you in the video description and pinned comment. You'll also see in the top right-hand corner right now. We're starting things off with a how to set up video, which I'll show you exactly how to get all the components to the table for the very first act, which is inside of one of the major scenarios in the game. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But for those that have not checked out my prototype unboxing, I definitely recommend you do, as I go over all the components that came as part of this prototype box. And some of those may or may not show up during gameplay. So a good idea to check that out. It'll be in the top right-hand corner right now. Champions of Rokugan lets you take up the sword, spear, or spells of the greatest heroes of the Legend of the Five Rings universe. So if you're a fan of that universe, this is likely going to be of interest to you. During these troubled times, danger comes from within the realm and its clan wars, as well as from the dark forces of the Shadowlands. This is a cooperative game for 1 to 5 players where you're investigating fighting to honorably carry out the mission entrusted to your group of samurai. Although a subject of Rokugan, your loyalty is to your clan, and you'll want to seek glory for it in the eyes of the Emerald Empire. So without further ado, let's dive into the steps to set up. We start off by choosing a scenario to play. Within the prototype scenario book, which you can see digitally here, we have the Trader's scenario. This is the one I'm going to be setting up for. You'll see there's an Act 1, an Act 2, and then a conclusion. So inside of a scenario, you'll have multiple acts leading you to a conclusion. Now, the scenario sheet's going to be in addition to the core rulebook. Of course, it's going to give you additional setup instructions and also additional special rules for each scenario's different acts. So as you can see here, as you get into each of the acts, you're going to start to see objectives, setup instructions. We need to focus on this for this video. And then it gets into the phases of the game: preparation, champion, enemy, and recovery phases. Each one of them will let you know whether they're running as per usual or if there's a little bit of a tweak to them. So you can see the preparation phase for us will be carried out as normal, but the champion phase certainly has some different things going on. We'll talk about all those phase rules when we get into part number 1, and we'll also go ahead and read all the flavor text in part number 1's gameplay video to come. And before we get into our very first step of setup, I do want to show you this section at the very top of the scenario sheet. Is very important. It has some good information up here. You got the scenario type. Investigation is the major thing we're going into here. It's adventure. There'll also be some combat involved potentially as well. Mandatory champions going in, there are none, but some scenarios might actually call for certain champions. And then forbidden ones, individuals that can't actually come into a given scenario. And you've got the game board. This one's called the Palace. I've already set it up here on the table. Difficulty there is tied to the honorable victory threshold. This is something we'll set up in a little bit. You'll see exactly what token marks that, and there's a change to that token in its position based on whether you choose anything other than normal. If it's normal, it stays where it's at based on its calculation. If you go easy or hard, you're going to have a change in either a -3 or a +3 depending. And you've got the duration of Act 1 being 3 turns. That'll also be tracked when we do setup here in a second. And then the duration of Act 2 is going to be special, meaning rules down below are going to actually tell you exactly on this sheet how Act 2's duration is going to work out. So all the scenarios you end up going on will be inside the scenario booklet, allowing you to participate in either individual stories, known as scenarios, or stories that are part of a larger narrative arc, which are called campaigns. So you've got the individual one-shots, but you also have the ability to enjoy campaigns in the game. Each scenario can be played independently of the others, but they're all linked by the story of the clan wars and follow that timeline. Now, as you'll remember from the scenario sheet, this scenario I'm about to set up was listed as investigation/adventure. Now, there are 4 different scenario types you can run into currently based on the prototype. First off is adventure, second is investigation and adventure, and third and last is battle. Adventure is the most basic type of scenario you'll run into. It's where champions are going to face off against enemies in combat, have tactical movement, there'll be some skill tests, but all the standard rules generally apply. Now, when you get into investigation, things start to get a little bit more spicy. So some adventure scenarios also include investigation, just like the one we're about to set up. And they're going to combine investigation and combat together. So champions are going to have to question certain people to progress through the story. There'll be interactions, but combat's also weaved in there on top of it. And there may be special rules along the way and different additional decks of cards added in to allow for different types of gameplay. And the final type is battles. And if you have a battle, you're going to have more miniatures on the game board. It's going to feel like a large-scale battle going on. These scenarios are never going to include any kind of investigations. You're not going to be talking things out at this point. You're in full-scale war. Battles are known for additional scenario rules, and also they are typically longer. The first step of setup is to be inside the scenario book, and after the scenario sheet you saw me check out earlier, right afterwards is going to be a full graphic of all the tokens that you're going to place in miniatures on the game board. So you can see along the bottom here, we start to see deployment tokens. We got 1, 2, and 3 of them. Next up, we have 7 persona tokens, and as I mentioned before, inside the scenario book, you'll actually have the full breakdown of all the different pieces and where they go. There's 1 spearman reinforcement token, which is placed right here. And towards the north side of the game board, there are 8 suspicious rooms to check out. This scenario also starts with 4 spearmen on the game board. We have 2 over here on the west side and 2 on the east side of the board. Next up are the enemy cards. They look like this. Some enemy cards will actually be tagged as enemy, and then on the other side, they'll actually say ally as well, because they can be on either side. And then some of them will just straight up be enemies only, and we'll just have a backside with artwork on them. But basically, take your enemy cards and place them nearby, and only need to worry about referencing the ones that are currently in play, of course. That's going to do it for the board setup as well as the enemy cards. Let's now move to the investigation deck, because we know the scenario type involves an investigation. This is the investigation deck, and now we're going to use the special setup instructions we saw on the scenario sheet. It talks about how to set up the investigation deck, and it tells us to go through it and find 2 cards that are called interesting information cards 9 and 10. Both of those cards are removed from the deck and out of play, and next we're going to go into the deck at random, shuffling them first and then randomly picking one out without looking at it, and we're going to place it next to this deck. So I've gone ahead and drawn one at random, and it's sitting right here. Next, we're going to go inside the deck, and we're going to remove 5 pointless discussion cards, 2 alert cards, and 2 outrage cards. Now in the prototype, the alert cards are known as lookout cards. So I've got 2 of those removed. So all of those cards I mentioned are now gone out of the equation. We've got 1 face down here, which we do not know, and a fully shuffled investigation deck over here. Next, we'll place some dice nearby. We got the elemental dice, the larger dice here. The D6 dice are known as enemy dice. Next up, we got combat tokens and wound tokens inside of a game tray. The game tray is not part of the prototype or in the final version. I'm just using it to keep these tokens organized. Now, you might be using corruption tokens, or you might be using other scenario-specific tokens depending on the scenario you're playing. And again, the setup instructions will point you to those, and you can place them nearby. That'll do it for choosing a scenario and setting it up. We're now moving to choosing a champion, and there's a number of champions you can choose from in this game. You can pick one to your liking with varying effects and abilities. As you can see, and their stats along the bottom also change. You can also just pick strictly by the artwork itself. I'm going to choose a control Asahina because I believe her art of conversation is going to come in handy with the investigation, and I also like her ability to use melee and range. Now you're going to choose your champion's dashboard and keep an eye on its color, as that's going to be connected to the player base you'll be attaching to the miniature. However, for the prototype, I don't have one of those bases. I'll be using something else to proxy instead. So your champion card is going to go in the recessed area here on your champion dashboard, and your clan power card is going to go in the top right-hand corner. On the bottom of the champion card, a number of stats, and each one of the colors of the numerical values tied to the different tracks on the dashboard, and then you can place a colored cube to match in each of those slots to match the numbers. So going across the different stats for the character here, LP at 5 is going to be your life points, AP at 6 is your action points in blue, and then honor is 5, which is in yellow on the track. Now the black one here has a key of 2. They're going to be tracked by placing them in this area here. This is the available key area, and then also down below here is what's known as purity, and purity always starts the black cube in the 5 position. Now remember, I told you to keep an eye on the color of your dashboard. At this point, you'll be grabbing tokens that are exactly the same color, and they're going to be tokens for the glory counter, which is going to be this one right here. And then you've got the activation token, which is a bit larger right here. The next important step of setup is choosing your starting clan objectives. So every champion in the game is tied to a clan, so you'll see this by the color of the actual champion's card. Also, you'll see in the backdrop there, almost watermarked, the exact same icon. This is the Crane clan. So you grab the cards that are specific to that clan, give them a shuffle, and draw 3 at random. Out of the 3 revealed, we have to keep at least 1, but we could keep more. But there's danger here because any clan objective we are not successful at accomplishing is going to cause us to lose glory points at the end of the game. I'm choosing to keep 2, which might be risky, but we're going to try and see if we can pull off completing both clan objectives. The clan objectives that you chose to discard are shuffled back into the deck, and it just stays next to your dashboard. The final thing I want to mention here on the dashboard is right here, this key area is essentially broken into an available and spent area. So on the left-hand side, it's available. On the right-hand side, it's spent. So just ensure that those cubes are on that left-hand side to start. If you're playing the game solo or you don't have 5 players around the game table to fill out a champion for every single player, you're instead going to fill out the rest of the party with what's known as companions. These will be champions for all intents and purposes, but these champions will not have objective cards, and each one of these are going to be a carbon copy in terms of their actual dashboard. So once you know one, you know the others, and you're using the dashboards to simply track the actual tracker cubes and stats on them. Again, the actual color of the dashboard will tie back to the color of the player base. You'll know exactly which one you're moving around the game board because there'll be 4 of them that are the same. But in the final version, instead of just having multiples of the exact same one, like you can see here, there will be ones that are specifically tied to the clan that you are using, which will be a lot more interesting to use. You'll have avenues to do both. You can choose to go with these ones, or you can choose to go with the clan-specific ones, but more details on that will be on the crowdfunding campaign. Each one of those individuals has the exact same stat attributes all the way down, so all 4 dashboards have been set up. They also have a miniature to represent each of them, as well as the champion that we talked about at the very beginning, just south of this shot. We're going to take all the miniatures out right now, and we're going to actually place them into the deployment area. So my 4 Bushi have now spawned in at various spots across the bottom here. We have 3 full areas we can actually spawn or deploy inside of. I've also got my major champion over here on the right. The last major component of setup is going to be the tracker board, where we have turns, honor, and glory being tracked here, as well as activations along the bottom. The turn counter token is going to go on the 1 position. Based on the scenario sheet we read earlier, Act number 1's duration is 3 turns, so we go ahead right now and place the maximum turns token in the 3 position. We now take the glory counter token for each of the champions based on the colors within the game. So again, my major champion that I'm controlling is purple, but all 4 other Bushis are known as champions for gameplay purposes, so their tokens are all placed underneath as well. Next on the glory tracker, I'm going to place 5 defensive successes tokens in a stack right here above 3. In a similar manner, you're going to place 5 offensive successes just above 6 on the glory track. And then 5 enemy die transformation tokens just above 9. Now on the honor track, you're going to take the group honor counter, which is going to be a sum of all the honor across all the champions, including the regular champion that I'm controlling and 4 of the companion champions. So currently my actual honor on her is 5, whereas the rest of them have 3 for a total of 17. Last but not least, we have the Honorable Victory Threshold token. We talked about this token earlier in the video. We're placing it now. It's still the sum of the champion's honor, but it also adds into the equation the Destiny score. And the Destiny score comes from the actual name of your champion. Right next to it, there's a flower icon and a numerical value inside. So for my main character, my main champion, she has a 1. For the other 4, they have a 0. So we're really just incrementing this by 1. But remember, if you choose an easier or harder difficulty, that's where the +3 or -3 would impact this V token right now. The final major step of setup is Imperial Favor. The champion with the highest honor score will play first. If there's a tie, the players involved are going to roll 5 elemental dice, the really big dice we set up earlier on, and the first to roll more fire symbols than the other will be the first player. They take the Imperial Favor token, which is this one right here, and they choose their position on the activation track, which is at the bottom of those tracks we just looked at moments ago. The turn, honor, glory at the very bottom is the activation track, and they would go ahead and do their selection of their position during turn 1. However, because I'm playing solo, we don't need to do this. Imperial Favor is automatically given to the only player playing at the table, which is me. So I have full control as to the activation order of each of the tokens for all of the different champions I'm controlling. So for the moment, I'll have my main champion here at the very beginning and the other 4 afterwards. That's going to do it, and as I mentioned earlier on, the prototype did not come with the bases that the final version will, which will be color-coded to each of those tokens and the dashboards to ensure you know exactly which individual is which. And that, my friends, will wrap up the how to set up video, and I'll certainly have a solution in place as we go into part number 1's gameplay, so you can visually see which individual is which color across the activation board, as well as on each of the dashboards. Now, it's worth mentioning, I am playing on a 4x3 surface, so if you're wondering the scale of this game on the table, I'd say 3x3 is probably a perfect fit. 4x3 is comfortable. So that's going to wrap up the how to set up video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really hope this was informative for you, and stay tuned to the channel as we actually dive into gameplay together so you can see it in action to help you make a decision on this game as it lands on GameFound very soon. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.